After all.
You are listening to Radical Sacred, a podcast centered around spirituality, nature, and connection.
I'm Phil Dickey, pastor, eco-spiritualist, activist, friend of trees, and a small-town Missourian living in the heart of Dallas.
And I'm Jenny Mislin, spiritual director, teacher, seeker, bird watcher, and a homesick Texan living in France.
Join us now as we live the questions, learn from open-hearted conversations, and explore our own deep and sacred roots. Altars by Austin Rodenbiker. 2 sprigs of rosemary, a champagne flute, a black candle. 3 leaves from an apple tree, a thin silver chain, a baseball cap. 2 blue kerchiefs, 20 holly berries, a bar of chocolate. Gray sand, 9 VHS tapes, a pour of clean water. Clean sheets, a loop of wire. A swan orchid in full bloom, 4 pieces of pyrite, a shard of glass shaped like the moon. The 6 dozen dooryard violets I gathered last autumn in second harvest. 1 Celtic knot that is small, and red, and red.
Friends, we're so excited today because Dave Schildkret is joining us. He is an internationally renowned author, artist, and teacher behind the Morning Altars movement, inspiring tens of thousands of people to make life more beautiful and meaningful through ritual, nature, and art. He's got a ton of followers on social media, sold out workshops, installations, trainings, and public speaking events worldwide. Day is a thought leader devoted to healing the culture by teaching people to ritualize the big and small moments of our work and of our lives. I discovered Day a couple months ago on Instagram. I'm a big believer in synchronicity, and when people pop up that have what you need, you pay attention. And I love the work that you do. I love the books that you've written, and we're just super excited to talk to you today. Is there anything else that you would like for us to know about you, Day?
Oh, I mean, I'm also, I don't just teach about what you just read, I'm also living it. So I think the most important thing right now is I am personally at some significant thresholds. I just moved into a new home about a week ago. And so that comes with all the excitement and disorientation that new homes have. I just moved my mother across the country to be 5 minutes from me. And my mother is with late stage dementia. And so I am also at a massive transition with her and her life. And so, it is learning how to be with change in a way that's healthy and not kind of being a victim of it, but in some ways being like riding it like a wave.
I love you just mentioned thresholds, transitions. I want you to explain altars first, probably, because that would be helpful for our audience. But
Yeah.
And what really inspired and brought you into the Morning Altars work here. But then I want to come back to these thresholds and how that's impacting you and what you're doing with altars too. So will you just, let our audience know what got you into the Morning Altar movement?
Another threshold, which was a breakup and my father's death. And that was about 15 years ago. And if you've experienced kind of either of those, you know that they can be incredibly disorienting, but kind of the double whammy of those was just like pure wreckage. And, loss in general, it's really hard to just continue with life as is, right? Like it's hard to just do the normal things like grocery shop or socialize or just get work done. And that's proper. like it is meant to be that way. But the world that we live in and the culture that we live in is kind of pushing us forward to just kind of get back to normal and get our stuff done and get back on the horse, as they say. And so, anyway, I was having trouble at the time, about 15 years ago, to do any of my life. And thank God I adopted my father's dog, and she got me out of the house, which was the first obstacle when it comes to grief, which is it just is very natural and easy to want to hermit and kind of be in a safe bubble. And so Rudy, who is a very stubborn miniature schnauzer, she she wanted to do dog things like go for a walk. And so every morning, every evening, she literally saved my life. She got me out of the house, out of the first threshold, which was my front door, and on a dog walk. And because of the loss, I was just ruminating all the time in my head, just kind of like holding the leash, but my head would be down and I would just be lost in thought. And she would be totally alive to the world, which is what animals are, and chasing squirrels and being really interested in smells. And I have two outside right here, right now, being super curious. And I wasn't curious at all. I was just in some ways I was lamenting all of the loss. And one morning, Rudy and I walked to the top of this hill inside of the regional park near my house. And underneath this eucalyptus tree at the convergence of three pathways were these gorgeous mushrooms, like glistening, almost painted like they were watercolor. And I just had to sit down. Like it's like the mushrooms pulled me out of myself, out of the isolation of my mind and back into the world. And I sat down and I just, and just sitting down on the earth just naturally slows you down. And I just started to hear the birds and I started to feel the breeze and I started to see the mushrooms. And then something happened, which was almost like beyond me. I started to arrange the mushrooms. I took them, I put them in a shape. When you're like a kid and you start to pull up grass or break sticks or whatever, and you're on like this, you're just playing with the earth. So I started to play with the earth. I just started to create a shape with the mushrooms. And then there were these beautiful eucalyptus buttons nearby and this beautiful eucalyptus bark. And I just started to make this design, and an hour went by like it was a minute. And I thought to myself, this is the first time in like 8 months where I feel like myself. The first time in 8 months where I don't feel completely overwhelmed by my grief. Something got metabolized in that, being outside, making something, and eventually realizing that I'm not just making something pretty, I'm actually making something meaningful. Halfway through, so the story goes, basically, I challenged myself, could I do this for 30 days? And go on a dog walk and make a new one each day under that same eucalyptus tree. And about halfway through those 30 days, I looked down at what I made, which was this pine cone that was surrounded by yellow sunflower petals in a square with these eucalyptus buttons around it. And I totally looked down, and the first image I thought of was my father's hospice room. And I realized I was actually creating story, and I was making meaning. And I was actually literally processing, metabolizing the things in my mind and in my heart that were unprocessed. That if I didn't process them, they would have hardened into something else that probably would have not been good for me. But in some ways, I transformed that pain into something beautiful and meaningful. And from then on, I started to realize, like, I don't start off knowing what I'm doing, but by the end, I know exactly what I did. And so I continued for 30 days. I didn't want to stop. It was like the best hour of my day. Obviously, I'm off the screen. I'm outside. I'm making something. I'm making meaning. I come back online. I'm like ready to tackle my day because like I'm more alive. And anyway, that led to sharing it on social media, which led to a book, which led to a teacher training, which led to now there are thousands of people around the world who are doing this as a healing modality, a nature, creativity, and ritual healing modality, especially working with people that are grieving and experiencing losses. But really, it's all change. It's all thresholds. It's not just about loss. It's we need to slow down, make meaning, make beauty, acknowledge all change, not just the losses. But anyway, that's kind of the origin story of how this very new, very old modality came through me, and never in a million years would I have thought this would have been my calling in life, but it is, and I'm following it.
Oh my gosh, Day. That was so beautiful. That was so
Thank you.
beautiful. And such a lovely reminder that when we've come to the ends of our rope with grief, curiosity, nature, art, all those things are going to lead us back to ourselves. You have a great quote on your website that says, "Meaning making is what restores our humanity and is my life's purpose." Will you talk to us about meaning making and
Absolutely.
how that's been a pathway for you?
Yeah. Well, when you say that, most people, when they say meaning making, I would imagine your curiosity is on the meaning, but I actually would like to bring the curiosity to the making, right? We say meaning making as if it's a phrase, but we don't really look at the word making a lot. That meaning is something made. It's not assumed, right? It doesn't just happen on its own. As an artist, I know what making is like. And I've already kind of told you the story where, like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing at the beginning. Like if you're writing music, if you're a painter, if you're a drawer, if you're a poet, whatever art, we work with mystery, uncertainty, wonder, curiosity, and play. Those are like our guide. Those are our bumper lanes, and we don't know where we're going. If I knew where I was going with my art, it would be bad, right? It wouldn't look good. Like, part of it is the act of discovery and discovery and discovery, exploration, discovery, exploration, discovery. And so it's a lot of not knowing, right? And so here's the key. The making shows me the way. It's by making that I discover, right? So the same thing is true with meaning. Meaning is made, so the making of it is how we remember what's meaningful. It's the only way is to make it meaningful again. That's how we remember. Otherwise, you've been in, like, we have, here's a great example. We have so many things in the dominant culture that were meaningful that are just like the shell of something. Here's a great example, because it's coming up. Memorial Day. We have this holiday in North America, in the United States of America, that is like, should be something significant, right? Like memorial, we're remembering. It's like, who are we remembering? Growing up and now, no one I know observes this holiday through an act of remembering. If anything, it's like a barbecue or a brunch or something. But there's no meaning in the day because it's not made, right? And the culture doesn't teach us that it needs to be made. It just assumes that if we have a holiday, it is the holiday. So anything with meaning, whether that's birthdays, anniversaries, death anniversaries, whatever it is, like, if it's meaningful, it needs to be made meaningful. And then you're in the world of ritual. And you're in the world of beauty making too, You're in the world of making something and crafting something and using your imagination to, like, bring it to life. And that's where it gets really exciting and creative to me. So, that's my life's path, is the intersection of meaning and ritual and creativity and imagination.
Will you expound a bit on ritual? Because I do think, I'm just imagining people who don't deem themselves artsy,
Yeah.
and maybe are stuck in their heads too much, I'm not referring to myself, but maybe I am. What is a good step for people to enter into the space of ritual whenever they, they want to do these things, like they want to be more involved in like the meaning making side of things, right?
Yeah.
But like don't know what that actually looks like.
Well, it's because we have so many examples of things that are like elaborate and decorative, but are not like meaningful. It's like we have religions that are just have these elaborate rituals, or we have these exotic rituals when we look at other cultures, but we don't have a lot of good examples in our own lives or our own culture where the meaning is made, but it's simple and it doesn't have to be elaborate. For instance, when I'm teaching, I light a candle, right? What that does is it demarcates. It's a marker that says something. It's like you turn the lights on when you're home, right? You're just like acknowledging I'm home. So lighting a candle, you don't have to be creative to light a candle. It's a base action, symbolic action that basically says something's happening. Something is here. Something's happening. And by doing that, you're creating, I'm giving you a lot of information. I hope this is not overwhelming, but essentially you're creating a boundary by doing that. And so ritual plays in the space of boundary. It likes to mark the entering into something and the exiting out of something. And then when you're in the something, it likes to know that it's contained, right? So let's go back to the example of Memorial Day, right? Can you imagine the culture marking the beginning of Memorial Day and the end of Memorial Day? And when you're in Memorial Day, there's something. Maybe there's a moment of silence where everyone steps out of their car on the highway. I don't know. It could be anything. But to know you're in it, you have to know you're entering in and exiting out of it. Those are called boundaries, right? And so it can be as simple as just now, I lit a candle to have this conversation because I'm speaking about my work in the world and my life's calling. So it's important to me. I'm marking this as special. And when this conversation's over, I will blow the candle out. It's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be elaborate and doesn't have to be super creative, but it can, which is exciting.
That's so lovely. I've never heard anyone talk about boundaries and ritual at the same time. Um, and talk about rituals in such an inviting way. It doesn't have to be pomp and circumstance. It doesn't have to be, it can be lighting a candle. It can be, it's marking time. It's marking space. It's marking presence. It's all the things.
Yeah.
Why do you think, we have a hard time in North America with ritual? Why do you think that is? And what are ways that we can invite people to pause and to make their own rituals?
I don't know if it's a hard time. I think there's a variety of things that happen. Number one, modern people are intimidated by the word. So, because the word feels either religious, and we all come with our own kind of like childhood relationships with religion, or as I said before, it feels kind of out of my life, like it's indigenous or something like that. Like it's not mine. I can't, right? Or the other thing that happens is it gets confused quite a bit for routine, right? So people think that their coffee drinking in the morning is their ritual, which it can be. But it has, as I said at the beginning, it has to be made meaningful. Otherwise, if it's just you drinking your coffee, it's not a ritual, right? So that's number one. It's difficult for people for that word to land inside of them. But from a cultural perspective, it's difficult because ritual asks things that are so counter to the values of the dominant culture. So ritual likes things, for instance, like slowing down. Ritual likes things like symbolism. Ritual is not interested in efficiency. Ritual is not interested in productivity, right? Ritual likes witnessing and listening. So it's totally counter to the dominant culture, which is always celebrating the new thing, the next thing, the faster thing, the better thing, the bigger thing, right? Ritual is whispering something totally different. And so, and it requires, as I've been saying, a boundary, these moments to enter in and exit out. And, you know, we're at a certain time right now where pretty much everyone I know is overwhelmed, stressed out, like, exhausted, not making, you know, we're barely just hanging on to like the things that we're doing during the day, myself included. I just moved, you know, and I'm also caretaking my mother, and I have, you know, a business, and fill in the blank. So to actually create space in the day to day, you know, the rush, the scheduling, the next thing, it's very hard to see the value of it, because it's better if we just get shit done, right? But then what is life? Just a bunch of getting shit done? So, you know, if you want your life, this one, as Mary Oliver would say, this one precious life you have, to be meaningful, you have to make it meaningful, which requires you making time for it to be made so. And that's hard. But let me tell you something really quick to your listeners. A ritual doesn't need to be 3 hours long. It could be 10 seconds. And a lot of mine are. Like at the end of a long day, I have a ritual that I do every night before sleep. And it's a life-saving ritual for me, but it takes me 20 seconds. That's it. And I've just fit it in the routines. So routine, brushing my teeth, you know, all of the routines, and then bloop, little ritual, and then bed. I hope that answered your question. I spoke a lot about a lot of things just there.
Oh, Day. I think it's making my soul either rejoice or weep, or maybe a little bit of both. I'm not entirely sure. Because it's just, again, the busyness, all the things, and I really love the distinction between routine and ritual. And
Yeah.
it makes me just, again, curious of, where did you learn ritual? Like, is this something, you know, you mentioned a little bit about the religious nature of our childhood and stuff like that. Was this something you grew up with as a child, and was religion a part of that? Or where did ritual really develop for you?
Yeah, I grew up in a very kind of non-religious, culturally Jewish family. And at 11, I think part of it was because I found my group of friends in that space, but I wanted to become more religious. And so at 11, I like took a massive detour from my family, and started down a religious path until I was about 20, 21, where the thing that took me out of that path was coming out of the closet, which is a whole other story and a whole other threshold, and maybe part 2 of another podcast. But the religious path for me was a profound education in how to make, especially time, sometimes place, but especially time, meaningful.
So our little tagline for Radical Sacred is, remember you are on sacred ground, stay rooted. How do you remember that the ground that you're on is sacred, and what keeps you rooted right now, Day?
Sacred's a funny word. And you've named your podcast with the word, but I'm gonna deconstruct it, reconstruct it, if you don't mind. Because when we say sacred, when you say anything like that, you're immediately conjuring its opposite, right? So as if there's ground that isn't, right? Because if there's sacred ground, then there's profane ground. So the question is it just ground? Number one, right? Like, does the little plot, the person listening to this who lives on, you know, West 48th Street in Manhattan and has a tiny little tree growing on a massive slate of concrete jungle, Like, is that less sacred than the person listening who's living in Colorado on, 5 acres of forest? That's a first question, right? Is that less sacred? So, and the second question is this, and I teach this so often to my students, especially in the teacher training, because we come in with a lot of idealism around place and land and ground. And because 1/3 of my work is based with it inside of the living world and with nature, the question is always this: what is your relationship to the ground? What's your relationship? And I use that word very purposefully, simply because, like any relationship, if you don't tend it, it doesn't do well. Think about your marriage or your best friends or your neighbors. Like, those relationships need tending. They need attention. Same word etymologically, right? They need you to outstretch from yourself and be in the back and forthness of the relationship. So again, it's not an assumption that anyone has a relationship with the ground, let alone a quote unquote sacred relationship. The question is, how do you make it so? How do you make the relationship healthy / sacred? And to me, that requires a lot of tending, like you would with anyone. Hey, how's it going? How was your night? Do you want anything to drink? Like, who else is here? Every day, multiple times a day, tending the relationship. When you do, you'll, like any relationship, deepen in the relationship and start to learn, like, oh, it's fucking complex, right? It's complex. And it's not just about you rooting in the ground. It's also maybe the ground rooting in you. It's both and. So without me going into a whole lesson right now, because it's so easy, for me, because I'm a teacher just naturally, like, I have to temper myself because, like, this is a big conversation. I mean, it's really a conversation that leads to, like, animacy. Is it alive? Is the relationship alive or isn't it? If it's alive, it requires everything that things that are alive require: food, water, attention, care, safety, etc. So that would be the beginning, not the end of an answer to that question.
Well, I think so. Our theme this season is reciprocity, and I think you just started touching on reciprocity in the way you talked about that. But I would love to get specific about. Let's stick with your rituals, especially of your morning altars. Like, how do you view that reciprocally, and how you're in relationship, and what is the gift that you receive, and what is the gift that you give in the midst of building those altars?
Right. So the word itself, reciprocity, etymologically means the RE is the kind of the back and forthness, right? So reciprocity is not one directional. It's back and forth, back and forth. And when you and this is the key word, when you participate, that's the key. When you because you're not an audience member to reciprocity. Most people, though, think they're on the receiving end of it, right? That's the problem with things like gratitude. Great. You got something. Amazing. Where's the fourth? You received. Where's the giving? Where's the back? Where's the fourth? So, I think that as children of a capitalist culture and a consumer culture, we need to do so much effort to keep bringing the fourth out, not just be on the receiving end of life. And so morning altars is one of a million ways to do that for me. It's first and foremost being on the receiving end, right? Of, oh my God. I mean, I'll give you an example. On my desk right here, like this feather, like, wow, being on the receiving end of how beautiful that is. I mean, look at the white border of that. It's really like, right? And this came from a bird that grew it and somehow lost it and fell, and it fell on the beach right? And there's this whole pathway that is written on the back of wonder, right? And so just being on the receiving end of wonder, the wonder of being alive and being alive in the living world and really receiving that's the first thing. And then participating in the fourthness, like, wow, I'm so overwhelmed by how much I'm receiving, to let yourself really receive that you want to overflow and give back. And to me, one of the ways that I do that is through offering beauty. One of the ways, like beauty making is a way of giving back. It's why people show up with flowers when they're visiting someone, right? They want to offer something beautiful as a way of saying thank you. So the thing about that we don't really understand, because we're kind of in a human-centric world, is that we think we're the only ones that like to get beauty. But like, why do we not think that everything else alive likes to also receive beauty? So, and maybe that is or isn't true, but like, try it out. Why not? And so the purpose of this is not just to move your own emotion, or like I said, move my grief at the beginning, but also participate in the back and forthness of life. And in doing so, you are fed by that. But it's not to feed yourself. It's like setting a table, like a feast for your neighborhood. And like, yeah, you get to eat, but so does everyone else. Right? And so you get fed, but so does everything else. And that's the way of tending the back and forthness in the relationships.
Wow. Back and forthness is so great. What you're talking about requires a lot of vulnerability, Day. To be present to self, to be present to nature, to give back, to be a part of the whole. It requires a lot of vulnerability, which again seems to be pretty countercultural right now, like allowing yourself to be in flow, allowing yourself to slow down, allowing yourself to be apart requires vulnerability.
Yeah.
Will you talk to us about that?
About the requirement of vulnerability?
Yeah.
Sure. I think there's a hidden door in your question. So I want to reveal the hidden door, because I think the vulnerability, yes, there's vulnerability, but what's the vulnerability of, right? Like, there's a vulnerability to me is like, and some part of you is exposed. That's why you're feeling vulnerable. But the vulnerability is because there's a possibility of intimacy. And so that's the thing that is like intimacy, right? Like the coming closer to, the revealing of yourself, like the tenderness in that, right? And so that to me is that's the hidden door of what you're naming. And really on a very basic level, you're suggesting, which is true, that we have to step outside of ourselves, right? And that's the thing that is so counter to the culture, because everything right now is basically like, step more into yourself, right? Like, perform, like you've got it together, like I'm the king of my castle, like I'm myself. And then like these weird, which is like, I get the impetus for it, but where it's going is so crazy, which is like this like flowering of like authenticity, right? It's like, great, I'm happy you're authentic, but we live in a world of relationships, so can you step outside of yourself, right? Like, I'm glad for that. I'm not demonizing genuine engagement, but I'm also saying there's more to it than just you. And that's where that vulnerability exists, at the frontier of yourself and everything else. And so that's to me where it comes. Vulnerability is, especially in relationships. I don't know how you two feel about this, but it requires a certain kind of like softening of yourself, not always being right or certain, right? Being willing to be curious, being willing to share your heart and be emotional, yielding your perspective, like that, and like having deep compassion for yourself and others. And so that's that frontier I'm talking about, that edge. And it's in between. It lives at the edge of you and everything else. And it's moving and changing. But here's the thing, it's more akin to skin, which means there should be a porousness inside of that. Skin is vulnerable, right? It should be. When it hardens, it's not good skin. And so it should have that vulnerability to it where it lives at the edge of your body and the world. And in some ways it's protecting you, but it's also, that's how you feel everything. So it's doing both and. So that's, to me, this landscape we're talking about.
all the feels in this, which is taking me back. We're all in the same really shitty club of we've all lost our dads, and so would love to know and just spend a little bit more time on the grief part of things and how ritual has helped you in the midst of your grief.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, I'm about to teach a 3-part grief ritual series about this to contend with the very thing that you just said, which is that ritual unloses our dad. That's what it does. It unloses them, right? Losing something is like what you do to it. So I lost my wallet or my phone. I lost it. It didn't lose itself. I lost it. So my father is dead, and he's been dead for 15 years. But is he lost to me? That is a question of ritual, right? The ritual is a mechanism to remember. Mechanism. It's a way that I can keep unlosing him and presencing him again. The word remember has 2 words in it. RE means the againness, and member means the coming together, like membership. So remembering means you have to forget. It's required to do it again, right? You have to have forgotten your dad, but the act of remembering is an act of bringing him back together, a la Humpty Dumpty. So, things fall apart, but it's our capacity as human beings. This is like a very old capacity that we have, which we're losing in today's modern world with so many things, by the way. But we're losing our capacity to remember, to bring back together, right? The things that remember for us are these things: the phones, the computers. We're relying so much on them. I could also do another podcast with you on dementia and remembering, right? My mother has dementia. I'm in a memory care facility every day around people who are losing their memory every single day. So there's an act here where we can participate in remembering. And it's not that dissimilar, by the way, from what I'm doing with my altar making, right? The altar making is bringing many disparate pieces temporarily into one cohesive whole. And then it goes back into whatever what wants to be. That's what remembering is. It's taking memories and bringing them back into some temporary, oh yeah. And then it goes back to blah, 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 to forgetting. And that's the mechanism, is like the making the bringing it back into something that is meaningful or something that's whole, knowing it's not meant to last. It's not meant to be that way forever. It will be forgotten. One of the beautiful things about this new home that I just moved into is my morning and evening dog walks are in a 300-year-old cemetery. So I'm around graves every single day now, that some of them, they died like, 1803. No one remembers them, I bet you, but doesn't mean they didn't exist, right? And so I'm around forgetting and remembering a lot. And I'm telling you, like, individually and culturally, there's like a muscle here, a muscle of bringing back together and letting it fall apart, bringing back together and letting it fall apart.
Jeez. That's going to take me a minute to recover from, Day. I remembering, yeah. I think you've captured this aspect of grief really beautifully, in that while the aspect of someone may change, the love is forever. The presence may change shape and form, but that doesn't mean that they're not present in the way that we move through the world and the way that we remember people. Will you talk to us about grief being an invitation?
Sure. I would more so employ the word as a verb than a noun. So grief is inviting, is a better way of saying it, in my mind. Grief is inviting you to fill in the blank. So the question is, what is grief inviting us to? There's not one answer, but it's an important question to wonder about. What is my grief inviting me to? And, some things that grief is asking for is like a container, someplace to put it. Grief is very much in exile these days in the culture. It has no place to be. It needs sanctuary. I talked a lot in this podcast about like the busyness of our times. So grief needs a place to rest and to be itself, without the pressure of the culture and without the pressure of it being like a fucking act of productivity or like needing to be efficient or produce anything. It's so offensive, and so we have to, and those of us that can, like, teach other people to protect spaces so that their grief can exist inside of, and they can fall apart inside of, and that falling apart is not so that there's no so that to falling apart. It's not fall apart so that you can get your life back together and get back and like, produce more. It's not. That's crazy town. So we need spaces. We need to advocate for spaces. We all need more spaces from those of us that are working in corporate America. Like, there needs to be advocacy for more spaces for like when someone dies, including pets, by the way, where we can take off significant amount of time to be grieving. So the question of inviting, I could probably name 15 things off the top of my head that grief is inviting us into, but space is one of the most important. A container into a threshold. Grief is inviting us into a threshold where it can be itself. It can be grief, and it can be valued as grief, and it doesn't have to answer to a landlord. Right? The landlord of our consumer culture that wants everything to have a purpose and a product. It is itself. Grief is itself. Grief is love, but unprocessed, it's pain. So we need spaces where we can metabolize and understand and be with, and then eventually transform the grief into something beautiful that feeds more life.
We've talked a lot about kind of this capitalism and the society that we're in, if there were say 3 things that you feel like if we could invite, right, if everybody was engaged in 3 things, like just an imaginative kind of dreaming space here, right, that would not necessarily pull us out of capitalism, even though that'd be lovely, but like just recognizing that we're in a system and that would provide space for this more healing, this more rest. What would be a couple things, 3 things that you really wish more people partook in?
I mean, it's the entire conversation we've been having.
Just all of it.
I mean, I could whittle it down to the 3 things that we've been naming, but I think like we've been talking about so many things that are contradictory to the world we live in, right? That are the counter to that. Things like reciprocity, generosity, slowness, meaning making, beauty making, these types of things are those 3 plus. I'm making it 10 things.
Totally, that's great.
But they all in some ways are another world that needs to exist within this world.
Yeah.
Ideally, as equal to, like I participate in the capitalist culture. Like I buy things all of the time. I'm participating. It's bad if it's the only thing, or it's bad if it's the dominant thing where it makes everything else kowtow to it. But so I'm trying to imagine another world that exists inside, if not equal to, this other world where we can kind of come and go inside of it. And there's so much education that needs to happen, which is why I'm here and which is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, which is about educating people of how to create alternative spaces that are, pardon the French, sacred. But it has, and this is me as an artist speaking, it has to be made sacred. It has to be made. These worlds have to be made. And you can't make these worlds if you don't understand how to treat thresholds. You have to, the education from my perspective, and this will probably be the next book I'm writing, which is how do we treat these thresholds? How do we, and the key word is treat, right? Treating. How do we take good care of the entering in and the exiting out of that container? And so to me, and this is really a conversation about care.
That's really helpful, because I think I was thinking systematically, like what would be systematic changes that you would make. And what I'm hearing you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that regardless of the systems that we live in, there are things we can do individually that are also collectively sometimes that are really what are important and valuable in the midst of this.
At least that's my perspective. I mean, I'm sure there's other people looking to make important systematic changes within the system, but I want to create an alternative world that lives like we're planets. The capitalistic consumer world is a planet orbiting the sun, but this other world is a planet orbiting the sun. And I want to believe we can kind of move between worlds, but we have to learn how to build those worlds into our lives and into our communal lives, our ways of being with one another. So my job isn't necessarily my purpose, my calling isn't necessarily to change this world, although it does get changed through this work. But I'm very much interested in helping people kind of tend to and create these alternative worlds.
Yeah, thank you. That's lovely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow day. This has been so expansive and invitational and full of meaning and all of the best things. And I hate to ask an ending question, but where can folks find your work? And what do
I
you
love that question.
We do. We want people to find your work because this is so valuable and important.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd say, my business is called Morning Altars. Altars, ALTARS, morning, like this morning. But there is a double entendre in the words, mourning like grief and altars like change, which I didn't even think about when I created this, but it just so happens to be that. I've written a bunch of books, so you could read more about my work there. But I'd say the things that I've made, which I'm the most proud of, are this teacher training, which is really part teacher training, part Earth Church or mystery school. As you can tell, I'm not just, talking about one thing. I'm weaving a fabric or a tapestry. And then coming up, I don't know when this is being released, but in June of 2026, I'm doing this 3-part grief ritual series, which is really aimed at people carrying loss, whether that's person, animal, career, relationship loss, whatever it is, and teaching them how to move with grief in what I call 3 time windows. The immediacy, the interstitial, and the expansive. And using art and creativity as a way of elongating and exploring ritual. And so that's happening in June. So those are the 3 things. And then it's just morningaltars.com or Morning Altars on Instagram or Facebook.
Well, Dave, this has been a gift to Ginny and I. I think I can speak for Ginny on that one too. And just say thank you. And I hope our listeners are appreciating, and we'll go find all those things because, again, the gift doesn't stop, right? It's a gift that we are receiving, and now we get to go back and carry it on and embrace that reciprocity. So thank you for what you're doing in the world and for the beauty you're bringing and the healing that you're creating as well. Our deepest gratitude.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of the Radical Sacred community.
In these uncertain times, may you cling to hope and deep connection, and may you work towards living in a spirit of reciprocity with all beings.
Our lovely intro and outro music is Beach Song by the band Saren.
And it's just the 2 of us here at Radical Sacred, so please help us out by sharing with your friends, rating and reviewing us. Find more of our work on Substack and Instagram.
Remember, you are on sacred ground. Stay rooted.